Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie. In this video I'm going to be doing an updated review on all of the makeup products that I tried in August and September. It's like right at the end of October when I'm filming this, and honestly if I could have had more time with the products I would have, because basically I sabotaged myself. I bought 3 first impressions worths of makeup in September, which is too much. Why the hell did I decide I just wanted to buy that amount of makeup? I don't know. Literally, I think to make up for the fact that I bought so many in September is kind of part of the reason why I haven't bought anything in October, so there wasn't any October's first impressions. I definitely need to do more break months next year, I think, because it's not healthy buying all this makeup. So I've got a lot of products to go through here. If I haven't got loads of detail on every single product, then forgive me, but there was just so many. See, I didn't do a first impression for October, so my next updated review will be a November-December one, which will be up in January. So I'm going to start with primer. There was one primer that I tried, and that's the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer, which has a lot of hype and discussion about. I know a lot of people really like this. I think it's a nice primer. Like, it feels very smooth on the face. I don't really notice any major blurring, major pore reduction or anything like that personally. I know a lot of people claim that it does. I mean, I guess that is really just going to depend on what your skin's like, how bad your pores actually are. My pores are awful. I do think it does smooth out your face, and it does just, it feels nice, but like I don't really feel like it does anything amazing for me. Like, I would happily wear it. Like, I feel like I would rather have it on than not have it on, definitely. But I mean, I just was expecting a lot more because of all the hype. Like, I thought this was going to work some miracles for my pores, but I wouldn't say it really reduced them at all, really. It just smoothed out my skin, which is nice, and that is helpful, obviously, for foundation and stuff that goes on top of it. Yeah, it's good in terms of texture, but like, I just don't really feel like it did any miracles for my pores. Maybe I just had too high expectations though, but I mean, it's fine. I could live without it, but it's fine. I'll have it if it's there. Okay, so now we're going to move on to foundations, and there was 5, actually technically 6 foundations. One was like a concealer slash foundation. I kind of used it both ways, but there was 6 foundations then in total. I filmed a wear test for all 6 of them, which will be inserted in this video at various points. So I've got the W7 Ultimate Cover Up, which is, I think it's meant as a concealer and a foundation. It's kind of the sort of thing where it just depends on what your personal preferences, which way you want to use it. It's also meant to like cover up tattoos. I tried the Revolution Conceal and Hydrate foundation. My shade is 0.2 in that. I tried the W7 Very Vegan HD foundation in the shade Bare Buff. Tried the Carter Beauty Full Measure HD foundation, which is in the shade Marshmallow. I tried the Topshop Longwear Liquid Foundation in Meringue. And then last but not least, the Carter Beauty Half Measure Dewy foundation. And this was just too many damn foundations to try over a 2-month period. I could have used more time with these, to be honest. So I'll start with the 2 Carter Beauty ones. So I would say that this is probably one of my favourites out of the bunch. It's the Carter Beauty Full Measure HD foundation. I have got this one on my skin today. The shade range is not great. There's not a lot of options, and when I like looked at the bottle, I thought that was going to be like too dark for me. Like, it looks darker in the bottle than it actually comes out. It's actually slightly too light for me, which is like weird. I was not expecting it. Yeah, it's actually a tiny bit pale for me, but that's fine because I feel like I can work around that much easier than if it was too dark for me. It's got a nice amount of coverage. I would say it's like a high medium coverage. Not full coverage, definitely not, but I think like the coverage suits my personal preferences, what I want from coverage. It has a nice texture in the skin. It looks pretty smooth. There's no patchiness. Like, I think the finish is pretty decent. And I will insert the clip in just a second about how it wears. It's not the best wearing foundation. It's not the worst wearing foundation. It's been just under 9 hours. Literally like 10 minutes off 9 hours since I applied the Carter Beauty Full Measure foundation. This is the first of the 6 wear tests that I'm doing, so I've got nothing to compare it to. Today was a delivery day at work, and there was like blood, sweat and tears. It's definitely been through it all today. There's quite a bit of breakage in my forehead, just right in the center between my brows. It's not looking fresh. I mean, it's fine at the top of my forehead. I mean, I don't know, actually. I can still see quite a lot of texture and breakage there. It's not held up the best, but it's not the worst ever up there. It looks really good in these areas. Like, it looks really like flawless here. It's just like the closer to my nose, which I have rubbed my nose a little bit, which is what I'll say every time I do a foundation wear test. I rub my nose, so I never judge like the wear on like on my nose and just right around my nose because I'm rubbed there. So, but like in these parts of my face, it's quite flawless looking still. It has sunk into my little line that I've got here a bit. So that's interesting. There's quite a bit of breakage on my chin, so I'm not super impressed with how it's worn, but as I've said, it's been quite a strenuous day. I've been sweating a lot, I've been working really hard, so considering that, it's certainly not bad. But I mean, in my opinion, this isn't the best wearing foundation, certainly not the worst, but it's not the best, not bad, not great. Found a lot better wearing foundations, but also found a lot worse wearing foundations. So overall, I do think that this is a decent foundation. I like it. I've probably worn it the most out of all of these. I like the finish of it. It just looks nice. A little bit above average, really. It doesn't do anything extraordinary for my skin. But like, there's not like a lot of faults with it, really, when I like properly just go into detail. Like, it's nice. I think if you're into a like medium coverage foundation, this is more of a semi-matte sort of formula. I wouldn't say it's super dewy. I wouldn't say it's super matte. It's just somewhere in the middle. And it's pretty affordable. Like, for an affordable foundation, it's a good foundation. I like it, but I've got foundations that I prefer like a lot more. At a similar note, the Half Measure Dewy foundation is a little bit more on the light coverage side. It is definitely more dewy. It's not like oil overkill or anything, but it definitely has more of a dewy finish. The coverage is a little bit less, which I mean, I personally prefer the coverage that this one has. It's more my preferences. This is a bit lighter than what I would normally go for. Obviously, I have filmed a wear test for this and I can't remember which one actually wore better, but either way with both of them, I don't think they're the best wearing foundations, but they're certainly not the worst either. Okay, so I've worn the Carter Beauty Half Measure Dewy Foundation for just a little bit over 9 hours. I think it's worn pretty similarly to the other Carter Beauty one, the Full Measure one. I think this one looks a tiny bit better. There's just a little bit less breakage on my forehead, but we still have got some issues. Like right in the center of my brows, it's just broken down really badly for some reason. Just right in that center part, it's just like a massive bit of breakage, and it's a bit weird. The rest of my forehead isn't terrible. Like, I feel like it hasn't broken down as much as the Full Measure one did. But then again, I have sweated less today. It's not been as a strenuous day. There is definitely some texture on my forehead I'm noticing, but the breakage isn't absolutely terrible up there. Outer parts of my face are fine. Definitely settled into this crease here in the side of my mouth, and a bit of breakage on my chin there. So overall, I think this wears just a tiny bit better than the Full Measure one, but then as I said, I did sweat a lot and worked a lot harder the day that I wore this one. So I feel like they are basically about the same when it comes to wear. Maybe the dewy one just has a tiny bit better wear. That could be down to the fact that it's like a tiny bit lighter coverage, so there's like kind of less stuff to break down. That is not based in any science or logic at all, just strange ramblings of my brain. I mean, I think if you like lightweight dewy foundations, then you probably would like this, but for me personally, like, I don't really mind if a foundation's dewy or matte or semi-matte. I like all of them, really. The only thing I don't like is when a foundation literally looks like an oil slick. I don't think it looks like an oil slick, but it is more oily. So in my opinion, these are both just quite like average foundations. They're nice. There's not really any major flaws with them. They just don't really excite me to put them on my face. So I'll talk about the W7 Very Vegan one. Again, this is quite a light coverage foundation I found. And when I first used it, I felt like it did draw a lot of attention to my texture. The other few times I've used it, I haven't noticed it as much. But with that, if you just use like your favourite powders with it, it does take away that texture afterwards anyway, so it's not a huge issue. It is a very dewy foundation. It's not like super oil overkill like that Carter Beauty one, but it is definitely more on the oily side. And as expected with W7 foundation, it wore really well. So I think if you're the type of person that wants a more light coverage dewy foundation, I would say I would go with this one over the Carter Beauty one, just because I feel like this one has better wear. Like, it lasts a long time, so I feel like this is a better alternative, and they're around the same price point. Again, this does have the same issue of it having a really shit shade range. This is too dark for me. I have to put white mixer in, quite a lot of white mixer in to get this to work. So I mean, unless you're like one of the lucky people that falls into like 5 or 6 shades that they have, you're definitely gonna have to mix it with things. I think for me, this is the sort of thing that I would like as a more light coverage option. I feel like in terms of that, it's pretty foolproof because it wears so well. That is something that's quite important to me, like if a foundation wears well. So I think I'd get more use out of this in the summertime. I feel like this is actually like a perfect summer foundation because it's more light coverage, more like dewy, but it also holds up for the whole day. So I kind of feel like this is the perfect sort of summer foundation because it does look quite fresh in the skin. Again, the only flaw that I can really say with this is like I would kind of prefer more coverage from it, and I feel like it could look a little bit less texture emphasizey on the face. It's not terrible, but it could look a little bit smoother over pores in my opinion. Okay, so I've had the W7 Very Vegan HD foundation on for just over 8 hours, and again I think this one has held up really well. Forehead, like, looks really damn good. Just a very tiny amount of texture just right in the inner part of my brows, but like barely anything at all. Like that looks really good in my opinion. Like that's a good wearing. These outer parts of my face, even coming in quite close to my pores, which normally like around my pores is just like a mess, but even coming in quite close to my pores, it still actually looks pretty good. Bit of breakage on my chin. I have noticed I have rubbed my chin a bit today though, so obviously that's slightly my fault, but yeah, just a little bit of texture and breakage on there, but nothing terrible. And again, it has sat on this little line here, so not absolutely perfect, but definitely really good wear. I kind of expected that it would be really good wear because it is a W7 foundation. From my experience, having tried quite a few, I did a video last year where I tried like 6 different W7 foundations and I found like all of them wore really well, so I kind of expected that this one probably would as well, and I agree. And I think I'm right. Like, honestly, I think this is a really good wearing. There is a few little minor issues that I have pointed out. Little dimple in my mouth, a little bit of breakage on the chin, tiny bit of texture between my brows. But I think what impresses me the most is like how good it's stayed like right in my pores, because normally that's kind of gone. I would definitely say that this is a good long wearing foundation, definitely. So this is definitely a more full coverage alternative from W7. It's the ultimate cover up, which I brought to use as a concealer, but then I got it and I saw that it was massive, so I was like, is this actually meant as a foundation? I think you can use it whatever way you want really. It's a multi-use sort of product. It does have really good coverage, I will admit, very nice. It does have a bit of a sticky texture. It's not my favourite as a foundation. I do feel like it looks a little bit heavy. It's also quite oily as well. I feel like when a foundation is more heavy but it's oily, I feel like I don't like it as much. Like if it's more light coverage and a bit oily, I don't feel like I notice it as much. But when it's oily and it's like quite heavy and thick, I feel like I just don't like the appearance of that as much. Yeah, I just don't really love the texture of it. It looks fine on the face. It doesn't look amazing. I think I would personally prefer using it as a concealer than a foundation. I will insert the clip of how it wore. It wasn't as good as the other W7 Very Vegan one. Okay, so I've done this wear test on another very hard-working, sweaty day. It's definitely been on for longer than 9 hours. It doesn't look great. Please ignore the little black smudge here on my chin. That's just from like something that's just come off of a cage or something at work because I've been dealing with delivery today. I mean, the first thing I noticed when I looked was that there is a lot of like texture bumps on my forehead. I'm not loving how it's looking up there. I don't feel like it's broken down too much. It's just really texturized. Like, I don't know if you can see, I'm just trying to get close to the camera. Hopefully it focuses in on that. There's just quite a lot of bumps going on. I don't think it looks great up there, and it has started to break down quite a bit between my eyebrows, and I just feel like on the rest of my skin it's just looking very like textured. I feel like my chin has gone pretty bad. There's quite a lot of texture, quite a lot of breakage on my chin. That area is not great, and it has sat on this line a bit. Outer parts, these parts of my face here are okay. And getting close to my pores, it's not looking great. I don't think it's worn great, if I'm honest. Like, I don't, but then I am bearing in mind that it's not necessarily meant as a foundation. I think it's meant more so as a concealer or a tattoo concealer or something like that. Obviously, I just wanted to try it as a foundation and do a wear test for it because I thought, just why not? I think for me, it's just not the best wearing. It's not terrible. There are definitely way worse wearing foundations I've found than this. I'm not loving the wear. Okay, so the Revolution Conceal and Hydrate Foundation. I know there's loads of reviews up of this one and a lot of like mixed thoughts. For me, I'll start by saying it's got really good coverage. It's like a high, medium, low fold coverage. Like the coverage aspect of it really impressed me. The shade is actually a tiny bit pale for me, but I think I should have got 0.3 instead of 0.2. But again, I don't mind if it's too light for me. I feel like I can make that work. But they do have like a really good shade range. I think it's got 50 shades. So there's definitely a lot more options to choose from than pretty much all of the other foundations that I've got here. Coverage is great. I can't really fault the coverage. I love that aspect of it. If I'm honest, there's just something I don't like about the way this sits on my skin. I just feel like there's a bit of weird texture to it, like a little bit of a grittiness to it on my skin. Like it doesn't look super flawless. It doesn't look super smooth in my opinion. Some days it looks better than others I've found, and I did do a wear test for it and I found that it wore like decently. It wasn't the worst, it wasn't the best. I felt like it was out of this bunch probably more in the middle. I thought like the wear wise it wasn't terrible, but I mean I think that the W7 Very Vegan one and the Topshop one wore better than this. Okay, so it's been roughly about 8.5 hours since I applied the Revolution Conceal and Hydrate Foundation, and this is the first time I'm getting a good look at it, and like I feel like it has kind of surpassed my expectations a bit. I think it has worn better than both of the Carter Beauty ones. I don't think anything astonishing is going on my face. It's a bit better than what I thought. So if we go and look at my forehead, it's actually not broken down very much at all. There's just a bit of texture, and there's definitely quite a bit of texture between my brows, but it's not broken down really badly there, like the Carter Beauty Dewy foundation did yesterday. Like that area was basically just like all red because it was broken down. Whereas obviously there is definitely a bit of texture there, and it doesn't look amazing, but it's not bad. And then just on the top part of my forehead, there's just a few little like kind of dotty bits that I can see, but other than that, I actually think it's held up decently there, not too bad at all. These outer parts of my face are fine. There is some texture and separation on my chin. Hopefully you can see that there. Not looking amazing, not looking awful. And it has also sunken it into this line quite badly on this little line here. But that's the thing with this foundation, I do feel like generally, even when you like first apply it, it is a bit of a line sinky sort of foundation. So that doesn't really surprise me that it's done that. What's really weird is that I'm noticing that foundation seems to be wearing into this little kind of dimple bit that I have. But it's only on one side of my face, like there's no line on the other side of my face, it's literally just this side. That's absolutely bizarre, I don't understand that. Like I did really want to light this, but for me, like I didn't feel like I really noticed any like supreme radiance or hydration from it either. I don't really feel like it looks super dewy on the skin. For me, it looked more semi-matte. No, there was just something a little bit off about the texture of this for me. It's hard to kind of explain in words what it was exactly, but it's just when I put it on, I just always noticed that I never felt like my skin looked like skin-like. It looked foundation-y, a bit cakey looking, I think is what I'm trying to describe here. A bit cakey looking and just a little bit gritty, like a not super smooth on the skin. I don't hate it. I think the coverage is great. I think it wears decently, and like I don't like hate the finish so much that I would never wear it again sort of thing, but I just feel like it's not my favourite finish. I feel like the finish is my issue with it. The coverage in the wear is not bad. Next, the Topshop Longwear Liquid Foundation. Again, there is not a lot of shades to choose from here. I got meringue and initially it looks like it's quite a pale colour, but this oxidizes really badly. I have to use so much white mixture in this because it oxidizes really badly, and I hate that. That's such a pet peeve. Now obviously it's a lighter shade, so it's not like I can go a shade up or anything. I think this is definitely one of the better wearing foundations, definitely. I will insert the clip of how this one wore after a long day. Okay, please ignore like my really inner corner smudged eyeliner. That is the Carter Beauty eyeliner, which I may or may not have already talked about in this video. So we've had the Topshop foundation on for over 8 hours. This is my first time having a look at it, and I have to say, like, I'm pretty impressed. It's not perfect. What I noticed was that my forehead looked really good. Like, I'm actually really impressed with how it's worn on my forehead. There's barely any texture, there's barely any breakage. Like, it looks really good. I'm actually super impressed with how that's worn up there. That's really good in my opinion. The only sort of issues I'm having with the wear, obviously minus my nose, because I don't judge like this whole area here because of my excessive nose touching, but it definitely has sat on this line here. Can you see that? Try and get a good angle. God knows. I don't know if you can see that on here. Sometimes I like watch my videos back and I'm like trying to point out something on my face and then I can't even see it on the camera, but hopefully you can. It has settled in this line there, and it has broken down a bit on my chin. Like, there's definitely some little dots and stuff going on my chin. It doesn't look perfect there, but not bad. I think calling it a long wear foundation is probably a pretty good name for it. I am actually like really impressed with how it's worn. It's still not the best wearing one I've ever found. That would be the L'Oreal Infallible, the W7 photo shoot, but I think I'd give this like a solid 8 out of 10 for wear. Like, I am pretty impressed with it, especially my forehead. Forehead for me is like a focal point to really judge the wear, because I never put concealer on my forehead, so it is just purely the foundation that I'm judging it on. So I do like to focus mainly on my forehead when I'm doing the wear. Yeah, in terms of wear, I actually think it's a pretty good. I feel like describing it as a long wear foundation is a pretty good way to describe it. Coverage is nice. It's probably not the best coverage out of all of these, but definitely not the worst coverage either. Somewhere in the middle, like a solid medium sort of coverage foundation. And the finish is alright. Again, like the Revolution one, I feel like it does look a little bit cakey on the skin. Like, it's not very second skin-like, but I mean, it's relatively smooth. I don't feel like it emphasises texture too much, but it's just not my favourite finish. None of these foundations have absolutely wowed me. Like, the L'Oreal Infallible Fresh Wear is the foundation that's wowed me the most this year, and I don't feel like any of these have done that for me. I'm sorry that I couldn't go into any more detail with that. As I've said, there's just so many foundations that I've tried over the last 2 months that they're all sort of blurring together in my head. Going on with that, I bought way too many concealers as well. I used the most, and that is probably my favourite, would be the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Concealer. Mine's in the shade 105. It's very pale and very yellow toned, like it's super yellow toned. Just bear that in mind if you're getting this shade. This has really nice coverage. It's not the most full coverage concealer I've ever found, but for me, I feel like it suits my preferences for coverage. I like the shade. It has a nice texture. I don't feel like it bunches up under my eyes or looks really crepey or really dry or really heavy. Don't feel like it does that. And I just think it looks smooth, it looks nice, and it's got decent coverage. And honestly, that's all I really want from a concealer, to be honest. Only kind of downside is it's quite expensive. I do feel like my e.l.f. Camo Concealer, it's cheaper, and I feel like it has a little bit more coverage than this, but a similar sort of finish. Like, I wouldn't say the finish is any better or worse than the e.l.f. one. Yeah, I do think it's a bit expensive, but then obviously it's Fenty Beauty, it's going to be expensive, but I like it. Honestly, I probably would buy it again. I mean, this is starting to run out because it's probably the concealer I've used the most out of all of these. In terms of a concealer that I wasn't really into, the Carter Beauty Covert Concealer. Looks like this. It looks like a mini version of the Dewy foundation, and it kind of is a mini version of the Dewy foundation, really. It's just not very concealery to me. In my opinion, this is like a foundation sort of formula. It just doesn't have good coverage at all. Again, it is quite like dewy and oily, the consistency of it. I mean, the finish is fine, but I mean, I don't really like my concealers to be super oily. Like, I prefer like a semi-matte sort of concealer, something that's not like super drying, but I don't know, I just don't really like oily concealers. Yeah, I personally just don't really rate this. So I tried the Revolution Pro Ultimate Coverage Crease Proof Concealer in 0.2, good shade. It slightly lighter than my skin tone, could use it to brighten. Coverage is really good. Like, it's probably the best coverage out of all of these. Phenomenal coverage for a really affordable price. However, it's just the texture for this I don't really like. I feel like every time I use this, I know that the second I put powder on, it's gonna like look really crepey, really heavy and separate, just because it's so thick and like so sticky, the texture of it. it just doesn't agree with powder, this sort of thing. So I feel like if I was going to use it, I'd have to use a very minuscule amount. But for me, I just feel like it's a little bit too heavy and a little bit too sticky, and it just doesn't agree with my powder. But I think in terms of coverage, it is really good. Maybe some skin types will get along with that sort of texture. For me, it didn't work out well, and I also did use it for like some cut creases and stuff, and I found that it would make my eyeshadow bunch up, like the same way in which it would like make my under eye powder separate. I feel like it would kind of do the same thing when I'd use it for cut creases for eyeshadow. So again, it's just a texture I feel like it's not good if you've got quite like wrinkly, liney sort of eyes or skin generally. So the Conceal and Hydrate concealers I also tried. I've got 0.3 and 0.2. Again, I felt like the same kind of way about these as the foundation, and that there was just something a little bit off about the texture of them. They didn't look super smooth. They could look a little bit gritty and a little bit like patchy almost. Some days they'd look better than others, definitely. Coverage was pretty good. I wouldn't put it up there with the Fenty Beauty or the other Revolution Pro one that I just talked about. It's not that good coverage, but I would say it's a pretty good coverage concealer. Same with the Topshop one. This has got like, I would say it's a tiny bit less coverage than those Revolution ones I just mentioned, but like it's decent coverage. It does have some coverage. This is the Topshop Longwear Liquid Foundation, by the way. It's in the shade Oat, which initially I thought it was a good colour, but then the more I kind of used it, I realised that it was actually quite orangey looking on my skin. Definitely not the ideal shade for me. The texture of it's quite nice though. Again, I would say it's probably more like, it's not oily, but it's more of a sort of, it's a concealer that's got some moisture in it as opposed to being quite dry and matte, definitely. It looks pretty good in the skin, like it's not dry at all. It doesn't like bunch up under the eyes. It's like good in terms of that. I just think that it could have used a little bit more coverage, and then I would have liked it a lot more, as well as having a better shade range, because this shade, I do feel like it looks a bit orange on me. Just in terms of this W7 one as a concealer, I felt like it's similar sort of coverage to the Revolution Pro one, like a tiny bit less. I mean, you'd only really notice if you were super close to my eye area. Again, it has got that same sort of sticky formula, but it's not as bad as this one. This is like sticky to another level. This is just slightly sticky. But again, I did find that sometimes it could like interfere with my powder if I was using it in my eye area. The shade is pretty pale, but then I just feel like the undertones are a little bit off. Like I feel like they lean slightly pink, as opposed to I want something a bit more warm toned or a bit more neutral, which this is definitely more on the warm side. Yeah, it is a good coverage concealer. I don't hate the texture. It's not as bad as the Revolution Pro one, but again, it is just a little bit heavy, I feel, this. We've got some interesting things to say about powders. There are a few powders here that I've not used a lot, just because either from first impressions I didn't really get along with them, so I only used it like once or twice more. Some of these powders I've used loads because I like really liked them. So this is probably my favourite one that I found. This is the W7 Set It Up Special Effects Finishing Powder. I did also get the pressed version, which is this, which I do like as well, but I don't like it as much as the loose one. This looks really good on the skin. Like, this looks smooth. It very rarely separates under my eyes. Again, the only time it would is if I was using like the Revolution Pro concealer or something, but 99% of the time I don't have any issues with it like creping and just like separating under my eyes. It looks really nice. It looks super smooth on the skin. Initially it can look a little bit white in the face, but it does like adapt to your skin tone. I can't guarantee, obviously, if you've got deeper skin, that it is gonna be completely translucent or transparent. I'm not 100% sure. I feel like it does adapt to the products that I have on it, and it doesn't make me look super white, but I mean, I just can't obviously guarantee that on all skin tones. I really struggle with powders, and I just struggle to find things that don't look cakey on my skin, that don't separate under my eyes, that don't look super dry and just super heavy. And honestly, this one doesn't do any of those things. This is really good. I did notice, however, that I wore it yesterday, and my mum put some pictures up on Facebook with flash photos, and it did look a bit like there was some sort of flashback going on, which I don't normally mind that, because I very rarely am involved in situations where there's a flash camera. You know, when you go somewhere with your mum and they just insist on taking pictures and you're just like, for God's sake, no. Yeah, I think if flashback is something that concerns you, this might be an issue. Again, I do have another small issue with this, in that it can affect my highlighter and my cheek products. They don't always show up as well. It's not like it makes them non-existent or anything, but I get more intensity when I use other powders. The L'Oreal Infallible powder does the same sort of thing. This is actually quite similar to the L'Oreal Infallible, the loose magic powder, which I really liked as well, so they're quite similar, I would say. Yeah, I was really impressed and pleasantly surprised with this one because, again, it's super duper affordable. It's like a $5 or something. You can get it on Amazon or on the W7 website. So I'm actually really happy that I picked this up and have it in my collection now because I really like it. These two I like, but I do have a couple issues with them. So I'll talk about the Fenty Beauty one, which obviously is a very expensive powder, and I do like it. It is a good powder. I have got it on my skin today, and initially I felt like when I was putting it on, it was looking quite patchy, but I feel like as it's like sat on my face, like it doesn't look patchy anymore. It looks absolutely fine. I do also feel like it makes me look a bit like ghostly as well, but again, if you the longer you leave it, the more it kind of adapts into your skin tone. This is in the shade Lavender. Maybe the shade Butter would have worked better, but then I was just a bit worried that it would be a bit too dark for me. I do like this powder. It looks nice in the skin. It sets your makeup really well. It looks pretty smooth and stuff, but I do just feel like it's a tiny bit heavy. Occasionally it would separate under my eyes, very rarely. I don't feel like it did it loads. It's a nice powder. I'd happily use it. Considering I don't have a lot of powders that I really like, I would say that this is one of the better ones I've found. You do get like tons of product in it, which is also great. So what I've been using lately is like a sponge to set my face, and I found that the W7 powder and the Carter Beauty powder, I have no issues when I use the sponge to set them, but I do feel like with the Fenty Beauty one, it can go patchy that way. But then it can also go patchy with brushes as well, but I do feel like brushes is probably the better way to go with it. I also tried the Coty Airspun Loose Face Powder, and this is in Naturally Neutral, which I wasn't sure whether I should have got this or the translucent one. A lot of things that say they're translucent aren't actually translucent, so when I first used it, I thought that it was like making me orange, but I think that was just because I used it with the Topshop foundation, and that oxidizes, as I've said before. The majority of times that I've used this, I feel like it hasn't made me orange. Like, it's looked fine. It's not translucent, like it's a tiny bit, like it does have a bit of like a skin sort of tint to it. I do find that it adds like a tiny little bit of coverage as well, which is quite nice. It looks pretty good in the skin. It looks smooth, maybe a tinsy bit cakey. I think if I'm strategic with the way that I apply it, it doesn't look cakey. Yeah, as long as I've not got a foundation that's too dark for me, or it's like bordering on too dark for me, then it doesn't make me orange or anything, but it's just sort of thing I need to be careful with. So for example, if I used it today to set this Carter Beauty one, which is slightly too light with me, I wouldn't have any issues with it. Sometimes it would look quite nice under my eyes. Sometimes I did notice it looking a bit heavy, a little bit scaly almost. It would vary. Again, I think it's the sort of thing that is just going to depend on what sort of base products you are using underneath of it. But it's a nice powder. I think in general, these three powders are some of the better ones that I've found in recent times, because the majority of powders like hate me at the moment. But I would definitely recommend trying out that W7 Set It Up loose powder. I also tried this Carter Beauty one, which I haven't used a lot. This does make your face white. I will warn you. I could only use it under my eyes, really. It's just, it makes your face white. The finish is okay. I did personally find that I felt like it looked a bit cakey, a bit heavy on the skin personally, and it turned my face white. And I know I'm pale, but I really don't want to look completely white. So I kind of would pass on this one. I don't really like it. And I didn't really like the Revolution Translucent loose setting powder. Again, I think this one did make me white as well, but I'm struggling to remember. Also the Makeup Obsession Pure Bake Transparent Baking Powder. I think one of them made me white and one of them like oxidized my makeup. I think this one like oxidized my makeup, like it made it kind of turn orange. I just didn't really like the texture of either of these. I just felt that they were a bit like heavy looking on the skin. They just looked kind of cakey, and I just didn't really like the finish of either of these. And the W7 Pressed powder, I definitely do prefer the loose version, but it's quite nice. I wouldn't really use it under the eyes. The loose ones work better for that, but to set the outer perimeters of my face, I think it's nice. It does reduce your texture. It does look quite nice on the skin. One issue I do have with this though is it feels quite tight on the face. Like, you put it on and it feels like something's just like gripping onto your skin, which is kind of weird. Okay, so I tried a few bronzers. I'm going to start with my two favourite ones. The Fenty Beauty Sunstalker Instant Warmth Bronzer in the Sun, which is the light shade. Beautiful tone. I really like this. It just suits my complexion perfectly. It's the perfect shade for me. I actually love this. Like, I think it's great. it's a really nice bronzer. There's nothing bad I could say about this. It blends out like seamlessly. It's not too pigmented or too harsh. It's just very easy to work with and like build up to the level you want it to be. And the tone is just perfect. There's literally nothing bad I could say about this bronzer. I'm quite happy I picked it up. This is technically meant as a setting powder, but it's the Rimmel London Lasting Radiance Finishing Powder in Ivory. But this, in my opinion, when I saw this, I thought, well, that's a bronzer, like for pale skin, surely. And it is. I really like this. It's like a super natural looking bronzer. It's perfect for my skin tone. It just looks so natural. Never like a stripe of orange on the face or anything like that. And it also does have like a tiny bit of glow in it, but it's like a kind of mix between matte and glow really. It's just perfect really. Again, not too harsh, blends out super easily. So I would definitely recommend both of these if you've got pale skin. They do have a few like 4 or 5 shades of this, I think, so I don't know how well the deeper ones would work as a bronzer. Obviously they're meant as setting powders, but and I know the Fenty Beauty one has like about 8 to 10 shades, so there is more options. Yeah, I love these are great if you've got pale skin. Okay, so the other ones that I tried I didn't like as much. So I tried the Carter Beauty. This is the Phoenix bronzing palette. I did actually use this shade up here to contour my nose today, and yeah, I think it turned out alright. I mean, I don't think these are bad or anything. Shades work reasonably well. I personally prefer the tone of the Fenty Beauty one and the Rimmel one. These just are like a tiny bit deep. Some of them are red, some of them are cool. I personally, for me, I prefer my bronzers to be a bit like more sort of yellow based. Like yellow, goldy sort of like coppery based, more so than like red or like cool. I mean, cool toned is fine for like contour. Like again, like as I said, I feel like this shade here is quite cool toned and good for contour. But I mean, I don't really contour that often, so I don't think there's anything wrong with the formula of these. I think they're fine. I think the pans are quite small. I generally do prefer something big to like swell my brush in when I'm doing bronzer. I don't think it's bad, but it's just the sort of thing that I probably wouldn't reach for that much compared to like the other two that I've just mentioned. The Revolution Pro 4K bronzing palette in Cool, which first of all I find it being described as cool incredibly strange, because when I look at that I think that's warm tones, and also a bit reddish. Like I wasn't like super impressed with the tones of these. I just don't feel like they complement my skin tone very well, and like they could have just been like a tiny bit paler. Revolution definitely does have a lot of bronzers that work really well for fair skin, and I don't really know if this was marketed for fair skin. There was basically just this one called Cool, and then there was one called Warm, and like it looked like it was going to be like pale, but I don't really know what skin tone they were going for with this palette really. I don't know, I was a little bit let down by this. I just also felt like it could often come out quite patchy sometimes when I use it. Sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it would. I don't think they're terrible bronzers, but for me they're just not the ideal tone. As I said, I want something a bit more yellow goldeny sort of in my bronzers. And the tone of this one in the Sculpt and Glow Contour Highlight Palette from Revolution Pro is just really red. Like this is so red. It just did not work for my skin tone at all, and it's quite like thick. It just comes out quite harsh as well, I found, but I feel like as an eyeshadow that would work super well because it's got such a creamy like sort of velvety texture. So as an eyeshadow that'd be great, but I don't know, for me there's a bronzer or a contour, I wouldn't use that. Too warm tone to be a contour for a start off, but then it's too like red to be a bronzer for my skin tone. So I did quite like the highlighter in it. Like I did hit pan, but then that's not necessarily because I was using it loads. It was kind of more so because it went down in the pan really fast. But I do think the highlight is like really pretty and nice. It's super pigmented, it shows up well. The texture's pretty nice as well, but again, like I felt like you did have to use quite a lot of it to kind of build it up, and it, again, as I said, it goes down quite fast in the pan. I felt like if I used it like about 5 more times it would be like almost gone. Okay, so in terms of the other highlighters that I've used, so another one that I bought was the Flower Beauty Shimmer and Strobe Highlighting Palette, and I think I got this one today. Yeah. This is super pretty and super pigmented. My one issue with this though is that it doesn't last very well. Like even now, like I put it on like an hour and a half ago and I feel like it's mostly disappeared from my face. Like you put it on initially and it looks stunning, the texture is gorgeous, but I just feel like it doesn't have the best longevity in my opinion. I don't know if it's like the base products I'm using it with. Obviously I used it on top of the Fenty Beauty powder today, and I've used it on the I've used it with the other powders as well, and I just found that every time it just wouldn't really last very long. But initially it looks stunning. I can only really use this shade as a highlighter though. This is definitely too deep. for highlighter, and this one is sort of somewhere in the middle. I feel like it would work better as a blush on me. I feel like it does have a bit of a cast if I use it as a highlighter. But this shade is like really nice. I feel like if this lasted longer, I would like adore this because I do really love the texture and the pigmentation, but it just doesn't last. And that makes me sad because it's so pretty. Why doesn't it last? Also tried the Carter Beauty. This is the Pegasus Holographic highlighter palette, and I did hit pan on this shade, but again I feel like a similar sort of thing. It wasn't necessarily that I was using it loads, it was just that it went down in the pan really fast. I only really used these two shades, like the pinky tone one here and then the whitey icy one. I felt like they worked really well for my skin tone. They are pretty pigmented. I do find that they go quite like gritty in the pan though, like the texture of them. And again, I also felt like they didn't have the best longevity either. So like they are quite nice and pretty in the face, but I don't know, the texture of them is not my favourite. And I don't know, there are more pigmented highlighters out there, definitely. And this guy, I have a lot of mixed thoughts on this one. So this is the Fenty Beauty Diamond Bomb How Many Carats, and when you first get it I think it's absolutely stunning. Like it's full of like glitter and shimmer, which not everyone likes, but I personally was like really into it. I loved it, I thought it was gorgeous, like I felt like a diamond. My issue with this though is that the texture is always alternating, like it goes quite like flat. I don't know if you can see that, like when you put certain brushes in it, it makes the sparkle kind of go away, and then like you'll put it on and you're only kind of getting like a sheer kind of dusting of product like this as opposed to like the prominent glitter. But then I would put certain brushes in it and it would almost bring the glitter back. For example, I used like a really like small eyeshadow brush today and I put it in this, and then I managed to get the glitter back, if you can see right in my inner corners. Right in my inner corners, like it looks so sparkly and so pretty, and like how it looks when I first bought it, and I'm like obsessed with that. I think that looks amazing and I love that, but then I only got that because I used a certain brush with it, and it was a tiny brush, and I couldn't use that brush to do my whole face. It would just be completely impractical. For example, if I would just use like a generic highlighting brush, like something like these, you know, just like generic highlighting brushes like these, when I'd use them, it meshed the texture all weirdly, and then all of the sparkle and the glitter is just gone, and then I didn't like it as much because it was way sheerer, and I don't feel like it had the same impact. If anyone has any tips to get this to like not be like really textured and to be more sparkly, can you please let me know, because I don't like what I feel like I'm responsible for this. Have I done this? Yeah, mixed opinions on this one. It's also super expensive. Like I don't know why it's £30. I feel like that's just too much money. I did also try this little blush from Douce. It's the Hidden Tropics one, which I used in my last cohort to get ready with me, and I've been using this quite a lot actually. I'm normally like not very fussy about using blush, but then I've had this in my drawers to review, so I've been reaching for it more, and I actually think it looks really nice. It blends out super easily. It shows a really nice like flush of colour in the cheeks, and it's super pretty actually. I think when I first used it I thought it was like too intense, but it's actually like really easy to get it to not look intense if you're just strategic. Okay, so I'll talk about eyebrow products now. So I tried two of these sort of style of gels. So I've got the W7 the W7 Brush On Brows, and then I got the L'Oreal Unbeliever Brow. So they've both got the same sort of format where it's like the gel was on a doe foot. I used the Unbeliever Brow on this eyebrow, and I used the W7 on this eyebrow. Which one do you think's better? I think these are both good. I like both of them. I do prefer the L'Oreal one. I just feel like this one looks a tiny bit more natural for me personally. I also prefer the colour of this. It's a bit more sort of like grey ashy toned, which suits my natural eyebrow colour like really well because my natural hair is quite ashy. So this, like, I feel the colour suits it more, whereas this is a bit more of a rich kind of chocolatey sort of colour, which I can get away with definitely, but I just prefer the tone of this one, and I just feel like it's a little bit more natural, whereas this one is a little bit more thick, but I can get a natural brow with it if I'm just strategic with how I apply it. I think these are both good gels really. There's nothing really too bad I can say about either of them. I think it just, again, it depends if you're into this sort of format or not. I've said it before, but how I do it is, again, angled eyebrow brush and like tap it on the brush and then apply it like that, and then just brush it through with a spoolie afterwards, and then if I want a bit more definition I'll just use a bit of pencil. Speaking of pencils, I tried 3 micro brow pencils, and I honestly really like all 3 of these, and I've not really got anything bad to say about any of them. The first one was the Makeup Obsession Brow Goals in the shade Dark Brown, and it is a micro brow pencil, but it's got like an angle to it, which I was a bit like confused at first, but it works basically just the same as a regular mountain micro brow pencil. And I've also got the Revolution Pro micro brow pencil, the newer one that they brought out. This is in dark brown. And I've got the W7 Stroke of Genius eyebrow pencil, which is also in dark brown. Out of these, the W7 one is definitely like the softest one, which I feel like is a pro and con depending on what you personally want in your brow pencils. For me, I think it's a good thing. This has definitely got like the softest texture. I feel like this one looks the most natural. I wouldn't say the other two look unnatural or anything though. I think these are really good as well. Really good for precision, really good colours. They just add like a bit of definition to your brows without looking too harsh or too blocky. I tend to use them also to touch up when I've used the gel, but I have also used them to like fill in my whole brow, and I think that they look really good that way. None of them look harsh or too blocky, as I said before. These are all really good. The only like sort of like difference I would say is that the W7 one has a slightly softer formula, but in my opinion they all have the same sort of result from them. So I would definitely recommend all three of these, and they are all super affordable as well. So in terms of the other gels I've had, these are just your standard gel formulas with like brushes attached to the lid. So I've got the Topshop Brow Definer, which is in the shade Charm, and then I also got the new Revolution Pro Volume and Sculpt brow gel in dark brown. And I don't like these as much as my ELF ones or my Benefit Gimme Brows. They're just not on that level in my opinion, and I adore those products so much. They're my ideal brow formulas, and for me these just have too much like excess on them. They're just a bit too splodgy and like they look quite thick and noticeable. If I'm like quite careful with how I apply it, if I wipe off loads of excess on the back of my hand and just be really intricate when I'm applying it, I can get a somewhat decent brow. But for me it's just a lot of effort when I've got other brow gels where I don't feel like I have to work as hard with, like the Benefit Gimme Brow and the ELF Brow Wow. So I don't think these are bad brow gels, and I feel like I was just expecting a bit more from them. I was just expecting them to be a bit more natural, just a bit less like thick and heaviness with the product. With the Topshop one, the wand is like, the thinness is like perfect. I love it, but I just wish that it was half the size. Like if it was literally cut in half, I feel like I would love it so much more. But even then, I still feel like it just grabs too much product on it, which even if the wand is smaller, I feel like I'd still have issues with it. The Revolution Pro has basically got the ideal wand. That's like my perfect sort of wand for a brow gel, but again, it just takes way too much product on it. I definitely preferred these two over the two I tried last month, which was the Anastasia one, the Anastasia Beverly Hills one, and the Barry & Brow wand. These are definitely a step up from those. These are better, but they've just not quite hit the level that I wanted them to. So I mean, I wouldn't like not recommend them, but I just think bear in mind if you buy these, you're going to have to wipe off a lot of excess product, and it's going to be quite easy for you to make your brows into a thick splodgy mess. Okay, so in terms of eyeliner for the waterline, I did try two, and look at this. Look how small it is. I can't really use this anymore because it's impossible to sharpen. But this was the Revlon Vinyl eyeliner pencil. And I do have this on my waterline today. And I have mixed opinions on this because I think the pigmentation was amazing. I think the creaminess was great. I didn't have any problems sharpening it. However, I did feel like I had to sharpen it a lot. Hence why it got to this size like pretty fast. Like it's been like this for a few weeks now. I only just managed to scrape a bit on my waterlines today. You definitely have to sharpen it like every time you use it. Sometimes multiple times you use it, it just goes like blunt like really fast, which was a bit of an issue that I had with it. And also I just felt like it didn't quite have the longevity that I look for in my eyeliners. The Maybelline Tattoo eyeliner and the Sleek Waterliner are two that I found that I feel like have the same creaminess and the same pigment. Yeah, this is definitely on the same level as that, but I just felt like this didn't wear as well as those two did. Like even now, like it's just gone like quite a bit like patchy since I first put it on. Like as you can see, it's just like, it's a bit dotty. It's not got the same like smooth pigment that it has initially when it goes on, and I've only had it on a couple hours. I mean, I could just top it up, I guess, but like, yeah, I don't feel like topping it up is really helping anything. See, I don't want to slag it off too much because it's super creamy and it's super pigmented, and initially it looks amazing. It's definitely the dramaticness I want in my waterline, but I just feel like it could have been better in terms of staying on your eyes all day, and in terms of like it like literally coming like this within like, I'd say like it took like a month to get to this point, which is I feel like I would want, like considering like I use the Maybelline and the Sleek one like loads, they're still like quite big, like they're not anywhere near the size, and I felt like I used them a similar amount when they were in my rotation. And the Carter Beauty Pencil Pusher Eyeliner, this doesn't quite have the level of intensity I want. If you build it up like a lot, you can get some decent colour payoff, but I just feel like for me, I much prefer the pigment and the creaminess that this one has. This one, it doesn't feel particularly nice to put in the waterline. It is like a twisty up one. It's not like harsh and horrible or anything, but it's just like, it's not the smoothest application. And it just takes a lot to kind of get good colour payoff. I just wish it had better colour payoff. And I did think that this was irritating my eyes, but now I'm not so sure. I think it might actually be the wipes that I'm using to remove my makeup, but I'm not 100% sure. It might be this eyeliner, but something was like really irritating my eyes because I felt like specifically my waterline was itching. But then at the same time, that could have been the wipes because I do kind of get into my waterline with the wipes when I'm trying to remove makeup. So this may irritate my eyes, it may not, I'm not 100% sure. I think there are better eyeliners out there for a quite affordable price. It's not the worst thing ever, but I just feel like it could have better colour payoff. And again, I don't feel like it lasted all day either. It didn't have good longevity. Okay, so mascaras. I have one incredible mascara, two really good mascaras, and then two naff mascaras here. I'll talk about the ones that I didn't like. To be honest, I've not worn them a lot just because I feel like I can gather from the first couple times I use it whether or not I'm going to like a mascara. Nonetheless, I did try a few times with this one, but it's the Carter Beauty After Dark Volumizing Mascara. It does absolutely nothing for my lashes. It's just not. There's no there there's no length, there's no intensity whatsoever. This is just a naff mascara. I don't recommend it at all. I would avoid this at all costs. There are better affordable options out there, some of which I'm about to mention. This one I got in my cohorted beauty box, my last one in August, I think it was. It's the Boombastic Lash Volumizer Mascara from Deuce. I've tried a few Deuce mascaras and I've liked the other ones that I tried, but for this one, for me, I just felt like it looked super clumpy every time I put it on. Like I just have like random kind of like gloops, like dots of mascara through my lashes, and it just wouldn't like kind of cling to my lashes like in a consistent way, if that makes sense. I don't know, I do feel like it lengthened pretty well, but I just don't feel like it had any volume or impact or intensity that I wanted for my lashes. So for me, I just didn't really like this. I think the other Deuce mascaras that I tried, I think one of them was called the Punk Volumizer. I can't remember what the other one was called, but I did really like those. I thought they had good volume, but for me this one just was a bit of a flop. But it was better than the Carter Beauty one, I'll leave it at that. So I'll talk about this one. I love this. I think this is like one of the best mascaras out there, and if you've not tried this yet, you really need to. It's the Collection Last Surge Mascara. Mine's an ultra black. I think there's like a couple of different black versions of it. There's waterproofs as well. But I tend to not go for waterproofs because I find them a pain in the ass to remove. This is incredible. This is so much length, so much volume. Your lashes look absolutely insane when you use it. The only kind of downside to this is that after about a month, it will dry up. Like this has just kind of been sitting in my drawers for the last few weeks because I've not really been able to use it or getting anything from it because it's kind of dried up. And I don't even know if it's dried up or if it's just that I've used so much product because I was using it like every day because I was obsessed with it. It's like $4.99 though. So even though it does run out like in a month, I almost don't even mind that because it's not like you're spending a fortune on a mascara every month to 2 months because it's $4.99. It's a $5, you know. If there was a high-end mascara that I was using that ran out like every 1 to 2 months and it was really good, I'd still be reluctant to spend like 20 quid on the mascara like every 2 months. But for this, like because it's a $5, like I wouldn't really have an issue with repurchasing it like 3 to 4 times a year or whatever. I can't fault this. It's a great mascara. It's a type of mascara that once you use it once, you just want to use it every day until you've just run out of it. And these two I think are pretty decent as well. So I've got the L'Oreal Bambi Eye False Lash Mascara, and I've got the Gosh Catchy Eyes Mascara, and I've got the Gosh one on these lashes today. What do you think? Do you like them? The only issue I did have today is because I used liquid liner. It is sometimes this specific liquid liner, which I've not talked about yet, I will in a second. It does kind of sometimes get embedded in my eyelashes, which then can kind of, you know, just clump up my mascara a bit. But even with that in mind, I still think it has actually turned out pretty well. And then I use the L'Oreal Bambi on this side. And I think I don't really look at this and feel like I have an obvious favourite. I feel like they both like look good. Like they've both given me some impact. They've given me length. They've given me volume. I don't quite put them on the Collection Lash Surge level just because I thought that was like phenomenal, but I think they're pretty damn close. Like, I was pretty impressed with both of these. I've been doing for the majority of October is literally just using both of these on top of each other. When I put both of these on top of each other, I feel like it does sort of rival the collection one, but individually I think they're pretty decent mascaras. Like, I'd happily use them. I think that gives me volume, that gives me length, I like them, but together I feel like it just takes it to another level and it just looks really good. So I do think these are good mascaras, but I just think that there are some slightly better ones out there in terms of the drugstore. This isn't my favourite L'Oreal one. I do feel like L'Oreal has some slightly better ones than this, like the Unlimited one, Lash Paradise, Baby Roll, all of those ones, and the double-ended ones that I don't remember the name of. There are slightly better volumizing ones out there, but I do think both of these are pretty damn good. I would recommend them. So I almost forgot to mention this guy. It's the Maybelline Tattoo Liner. It's a liquid liner. I have got this one on today and I kind of feel like I mucked up my makeup using this. I found that a couple times when I've used it. Like, the black pigment is really good. Like, it's great, the pigment. First of all, I do feel like it gets in my lashes a lot. Some eyeliners do this quite worse than others. I feel like if you're going to use like a felt tip eyeliner, for example, you're not going to have the same problems, but if you've got something in a bottle, it's way more likely to kind of get embedded into your eyelashes, which is just a pet peeve of mine that I don't like when eyeliners do. I just find it's a little bit difficult to use and difficult to get precision. I do find I have a better time with felt tip liners in terms of that. But then I feel like this kind of has a bit more drama than like a lot of felt tips. I mean, it depends which felt tip you're using. There are a lot of felt tips I found that do have good like colour payoff. I don't hate this, but for me, I just wish it didn't get embedded in my lashes, and I just wish that it was a little bit easier to use. I do feel like there's been times where I've mucked up my makeup using this, but that could just be down to the fact that I'm absolutely terrible at liquid liner. It might not necessarily be the product's fault. Okay, so eyeshadow now. So I tried this in my last cohorted video, and I'm not gonna lie, I've like not used it since. I just was not inspired by this palette. It's from Deuce. I think it's like a customizable palette. On the back it says the Freematic Eyeshadow Pro Palette in Smoky Eye Finish. But when I was looking online, you can like kind of customize what you put in there, but it's all like a highlighter and then a load of shades. In the original video where I used this, I just found that the mattes were quite patchy, difficult to blend, and not the most pigmented. The shimmers were like quite nice, that they were decent, but I just feel like there's not really that much you could do with this palette. It's just like smokiness, and then the black wasn't particularly great though, and I feel like if you've got a smoky palette, you kind of need the black and the deep shades to work for you, and I just felt like they were too sheer and not very blendable. So for me, I don't look at this and want to use it, so I'm just gonna be honest, I haven't really used it. The other eyeshadow palettes though, I've tried to do multiple looks throughout the month with these. I have taken some pictures of them and I will insert them throughout the video. So I'll start with the one that I've got on my eyes today, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually pretty happy with how my eyeshadow turned out. I just kind of last minute decided, hey, this is a Rainbow Sprinkles palette, let's do a rainbow look, why not? I think, as you can see, it's got great colour payoff. So this is the I Heart Revolution Sprinkles palette. I thought it was called Rainbow Sprinkles, but then on the back it just says Sprinkles, so I don't know if it's called Sprinkles or Rainbow Sprinkles. But obviously the colour scheme looks gorgeous. I mean, it is a rainbow, you know? The interesting thing about this palette is pretty much all of the shades are shimmer, or at least they have shimmer in them, which I feel like initially I thought, well, I'd have some issues blending that surely. Like, how would I get them to blend through the crease? Because shimmers tend to be the sort of things that you pack on to like a cut crease or just onto your eyelid generally. You don't really use them to blend through the crease, but as you can see from today, like, they do blend through the crease fine. I feel like you do need to shove your brush into them a little bit more aggressively. Some shades more than others. Some shades are like just like pick up the product amazingly. Like this blue shade called Jelly Bean is like insanely pigmented. Also this orangey shade called Jazzy I used a lot just for like more natural looks, and that one is insanely pigmented as well. Shimmers are beautiful. This white shimmer here, I've used that a lot as well, and I think it's stunning. I've got that on the main base today. I just think that this is a really nice, good quality palette. I'm going to insert some pictures of the other two looks I did throughout the month using this. If I'm being honest though, this is actually probably the favourite one that I've done. I think the other two looks I did were nice enough, but they weren't like as exciting as this one, I feel. And one of them, there was like a little bit of like a kind of patchiness issue with like the bit where I'd done the cut crease, but I think that was the concealer. That was nothing to do with the eyeshadows, because obviously I've used a different concealer today and I feel like it looks fine, so that little weird line was the concealer, not the products. Yeah, I do think this is actually my favourite look that I've done with it though. But I think that this is a really good quality eyeshadow palette. If you really just want some rainbow madness in your life, I think this is really good quality. I would recommend it. The only thing I would say is if you are the type of person that doesn't like an all sort of shimmer palette, then maybe not. If you've got some objections to putting shimmers through the crease, which, I mean, I personally don't have objections to that, especially if it gives me the sort of look, then I'm fine with it. But if that's an issue for you, then maybe you wouldn't like this. Out of the three, I think this is probably my favourite. I don't know. It's a tie between this one and the Turkish Delight one, which I'll talk about next. So this is the I Heart Revolution Turkish Delight palette. And again, I've done a couple looks that I will insert pictures of with this one. Mattes in this are super brilliant, show up really well. My only one really like criticism of this palette is it's got how many? 1, 2, 3. It's got 4 pressed glitters in it, and initially when I used it in my first impressions, I didn't really have any issues with the pressed glitters, but what I have noticed is that they do sink into like the kind of lines, like they crack. That's the word I'm looking for. They crack. They do crack. I don't know if that's something that you can avoid really when it comes to like applying a pressed glitter. I mean, I found that other pressed glitters that I've used, even like just loose glitters as well, I found that they always tend to just crack on my eyes. It's not really something I know how to avoid. But as you'll see with like the red gold sort of cut crease I did, there is like this real like crack going through it, and that was a bit disappointing really. I just feel like it kind of just took away from the look. And then the more bronzy one, it didn't crack as much because I used a more like sort of concentrated amount of it, but again it still did crack. So that is my issue with the pressed glitters. But obviously this palette isn't all pressed glitters, there's only 4 shades, and I just found that all of the mattes worked really well. Like this red was super vibrant, showed up well, the pinks showed up super well. And then the kind of the non-glitter shimmers I thought were really nice. This bronzy one was stunning. This gold one was stunning. I used this gold one like initially on that gold cut crease, and it would have worked fine just with that gold on its own, but I thought I'd like jazz it up with the glitter as well. But yeah, I think this is a really nice palette. It's just the only bad thing I can say about it is that the glitters do crack. They do go on really easily though, like it's not like a faff to apply them. You just need like a little bit of glitter primer or glitter glue, and they go on like really well. They're not all bitty, like the colour pigment is strong with them. Shame about the crackiness because I like everything else about this palette. I think it's really nice, love the colour scheme. Also this limey shimmery shade is stunning and I love it. This is the one that I had the most issues with, but I did get 2 decent eyeshadow looks with, which again we'll put on the screen. This is the I Heart Revolution Tasty Avocado palette, which is a very green themed palette, and green is my favourite colour, so I kind of wanted to go for it. The issues that I have had with this, especially just if you watch my first impressions video, they're more sort of like kind of minty pastel-y sort of matte shades. So for example Guacamole, which is this minty green pastel, or the more fluorescent one like lime. If you use them for the crease, there are some blendability issues. They can kind of blend away into nothing. Like initially they go on quite pigmented, but then they just start to look a bit patchy when you blend them. However, I did use the, I think it was lime, guacamole, and I can't remember if I used that one or that one. But I used a load of them for like a cut crease, and I found that I didn't have any issues like when I used them that way. Like they went on super good, the colour payoff was good. So if you're using them for like a statement cut crease, they work well, but then if you're using them like in your crease to actually blend, I don't feel like they work well, they go patchy. Shimmers are absolutely stunning. Like this shade called Smoothie is like gorgeous. I love it. I think the shimmers in this are stunning. This matte shade here is also really good and really pigmented. I mean, it's quite like a neutral one, but that one worked really well. There's some good shades in here, but I just feel like it's a shame that the more sort of like minty pastel-y mattes don't blend well with each other. It just kind of let me down a bit, but there are some really nice shades and I did get some decent looks out of it, so I don't hate it. It's probably just my least favourite because of that. I think, yeah, I would say the Rainbow Sprinkles is probably my favourite, and the Turkish Delight, then the Avocado. So I did try one lip pencil. I tried this in the last cohort video. It's from Deuce. It's just called the Lip Definer Pencil in Orion. It's sort of like a red colour. I didn't really go with the liquid lipstick. It was a bit weird. I haven't used this a lot. I thought it was really dry when I first used it, and I don't really use lip liners that much anyway. I'm kind of just going off lip products in general, but I've not really got anything to say other than it's dry. So I would prefer a creamy formulated lip liner if I was going to use one. Then the other product from Deuce was, what is this? It's the, I don't know, it's a liquid lipstick and it's in the shade Cupcake. And again, I found this very drying and just very like heavy, and it didn't look the most flattering on the lips. I do like the shade though, but it's quite like a baby sort of pink. It's not really the sort of thing I'd wear every day. The colour is quite nice, but I don't know. I mean, I've kind of gone off liquid lipsticks generally, but again, it's just like, it's just dry. So I tried 2 of these Carter Beauty lip tints. I've got Saoirse and Joe. I didn't use the red one other than the original video, but I tried it in because I don't wear red lips really ever, you know, so I didn't use it. Sorry, but I didn't. This one I used a couple times. I did put a little bit of I put a little bit of it on today over the top of my lipstick, but I kind of feel like my lips have gone a bit weird now. I feel like when you look at the colour like that, it looks up my street, but then when you put it on, it's super pale. It's almost like it looks super nude. I just felt like it looked a bit weird for my complexion. Like I felt like the colour kind of washed me out a bit. I mean, it's just like a glossy formula. It shows up pretty well. It's not sheer or anything, but I think it's like a fine lip gloss, but for me the colour just was a bit too pale. Like it just blended into my skin a bit much, so it wasn't a contrast, and I just feel like it looks a bit weird on me. I didn't really use this one very often. It's the W7 Lippy Chic Ultra Creme lipstick in Banter. The shade was alright. Yeah, the shade is fine, and it smells amazing actually. But it's just a little bit too glossy and a little bit too kind of like sheer, sort of the texture of it. I just prefer a more sort of matte kind of styled bullet lip. Which brings us on to this one, which there's 2 of, and I don't know where the other one's gone. But these are the Revolution Pro lipsticks. I don't know what they're called, but they're in the like leopard print packaging. This one is stripped, and then I've also got Cashmere, which seems to have disappeared from my desk, so I don't know where that's gone, but I do have that one on my lips today. I actually really like these. These are really good. They're definitely the best lip products that I've tried this month. They've got a really nice like velvety texture, but they're super matte, and they actually have some longevity to them, which is great. I actually really like these. These are really good lip products. I would recommend them. But yeah, they are a matte sort of formula, so if you prefer a more creamy formula, then go for something like the W7 one. But for me, I prefer something more like these because I feel like they have better colour payoff. What I've got on today, Cashmere, is more of a like browny, caramelly nude. This one's more of like a mauvey sort of pink, which is really nice. I like it. I like both of the shades. Yeah, these are definitely the best lip products. I like these. These are totally the sort of thing that I'm into. And I've worn them a lot throughout the month. Got to mention this. So this is the W7 Disco Diamonds Duochrome Dazzler. And like, it is pigmented and it's really pretty and sparkly and I like it. However, it cracks. It just like, there's a line. It cracks when I use it. And it's a shame because it actually looks stunning. And it is really pretty and it's pigmented and it shows up well, but I've not been able to find a way to use it where I don't just get like this horrible looking line going through my eye. That's really noticeable. Alright, so I think I've talked about everything. If I think of any more like kind of details, then I'll add them when I'm editing. As of now, that's all I've got to say. Again, I wish I could have gone into more detail, but like this is just so many products and I really need to, first of all, not buy 3 first impressions worth of makeup in 1 month. That was a silly idea. I don't know why I did it, to be honest. So I'm definitely going to space out my purchasing a bit more. Next year, I think I might like sort of do like first impressions every other month instead. We'll see. I mean, there is still a lot of products I really want to check out because everyone just releases stuff all the time, and then I do first impressions of makeup that came out like 2 years ago. Yeah, my next makeup recap will be for the products I try in November and December. So that will be up in January. And something that I want to do for my next one is to like start posting reviews on like websites like Boots or Superdrug, Beauty Bay, whatever it is. Just like actually posting reviews on there, just because I find so much of that when I'm shopping. I get annoyed when there's no reviews because I like to read what people say because it kind of like influence whether or not I want to buy something. So something that I'm going to do my next like updated makeup review is I'm going to review all of the products on those websites and then share my screen cap in the video, just because I feel like I should start being helpful to people, you know. I do find it very helpful when I see things on Superdrug or Boots or Amazon, Beauty Bay, whatever it is, with reviews, so I feel like I should start contributing to that as well, and then obviously I can share it in this video as well. I was going to do it this month, but then I just got overwhelmed with all of the makeup I had, so will do it when I have a more controlled amount of makeup. But anyway, thank you for watching this, and I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye.